Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
I love okay, so put yourself in my shoes, right? Like you know where we're going. I don't know where we're going. You're guiding the listener, you're guiding me in this sort of like adventure, and sometimes people like it's a I don't know, for me it's a very pleasurable experience to shift from one image to the next, because this one is quite a dramatic. Yeah, it's great. So what it is a photo of a group of, they're all boys. I see no girls. Maybe there's a couple of girls. No, I see no girls. Yeah, there's about 2, 4. Let's say about 15 to 20, aged say 7 till about 17. So behind the group is just sort of facing you. One of the kids looks like he's like flexing, and he's like, they're all smiling brightly. They're kind of waving. Some are waving at the photographer, some are not. Kids in a state of, I'd say, is it total intense poverty? It could be. It's hard to know because they're not dressed in very, they seem to be, I wouldn't be surprised if they were barefoot. It's on hard packed earth. In the background, there's like a thatched fencing that is taller than everybody. And behind that, there's some really tall trees that could be acacias, maybe not. In terms of what the people look like, sub-Saharan, this could be Sudanese, it could be, I don't know, Cameroon. Listen, I'm not going to guess any better than that. But the spirit, the energy is very high. Everybody's kind of looking good and seems to be quite enjoying their moment. So what is this photo?
Yeah, again, you've done a really good job of I think, encapsulating it. That's a village that I visited with a friend in the Gambia, which is the smallest country in sub-Saharan Africa. And we were working there, developing a program to train with our African colleagues to train community development workers. But while I was there, I met this young man, and he invited me to his village. Okay. And it was way up in the middle of nowhere. You had to wait, and the roads, and I mean, it made the road to Newfoundland look like a super highway. And but when we get to this village, we get out of the car, and here are these kids, and they're all welcoming us to his village. I used to use this picture when I went into classrooms to talk about Africa and my work. I would say, okay, I put this slide up, and I say, okay, what do you see here? What do you think about? What do you notice about these kids? Well, the first thing is most of them would say, well, they look like they're really poor. That their clothes, some of them have holes, and then I said, okay. And I said, what else do you notice? Well, they're all smiling. I said, yeah. So why would that be? Why would they all be smiling? They probably don't have clothes like you, and they probably don't have a television. So why would they be smiling? And I swear to God that the answer I got over and over again was, they look like they have a lot of friends. And that just really touched me, because, I think in North America, we sacrifice everything and for stuff. And so we have this, we're suffering from loneliness. Mm-hmm. And these kids could see immediately. These kids don't have a lot of stuff, but damn, they seem happy. They have friends, and I think you make a good point, because I mean, there's nothing romantic about poverty when you're hungry. You don't have enough to eat. There's nothing romantic about that. But up to that point, I have found personally that the relationship between poverty and generosity is positive, not negative. I mean, the more people have, it seems the less generous they are. The generosity of these people is amazing, and the community was so tight. And just one little example, if I can, when Buba said, "Well, you should bring a gift to the chief, to the alcalde in the village." I said, "Okay, like what?" He said, "Well, sugar is really hard to come by. I said, why don't you get a bag of sugar? Something on this little the 2 kilogram bag of sugar." I said, so how much? And he said, well, probably to get better to get at least a 25 kilogram bag of sugar. I think, what the hell? It was 50 pounds of sugar. And I thought, he poured it, or I don't know. So we took it. And of course, when we went there and he introduced us to the alcalo, I brought this big bag. Actually, I didn't. One of the men came and got it and brought it to the chief. And then after that, he welcomed us to the community, and we walked around, and people introduced us to families, and Buba introduced us to people. And when we got back to the central courtyard, here was the alcalo giving the sugar to everybody in the community. There were like 30 people there with cups and bowls, and so it wasn't a gift to the alcalo, it was a gift to the community.
Mm-hmm.
And it never entered my mind, right? So there again, a cultural difference that's so fundamental, and I think something that we've largely lost. And so there again, wow, something that I took away from that, and I still really value.
Mm-hmm. If I can just insert a little observation from my side. So one of the things about Canada, it being so cold, is that it's a lot of, well, in the summer, it's fantastic. So everybody kind of goes ecstatic and goes outside and really, really like, being from Montreal, and when I tell people it's the sexiest city, is because in the summer, everybody's just like really just radiating their life. But in the winter, because of the hardship of how difficult the winters can be, it makes you more indoors, right? So there is that. And then being in a city like Hong Kong of 7.5 million people, super, super urban, everybody's packed in. Now I, for myself, in this summer, I think it's also a reflection of being male and plus 50 years old. There seems to be, and I don't know if this is a reflection of my age or a reflection of the time, in terms of how contemporary life is isolated and where loneliness is a big sort of issue, right? And then contrast that with the photo of all these boys together, super happy, and then you saying, well, maybe what it is the interpersonal connections and the friendships, right? So yeah, you need to have a certain amount. If we go back to Abraham Maslow in terms of hierarchy of human needs, you need the basic minimum of food and shelter and whatever to kind of at least take that off the table. And then you had mentioned this sort of, I don't know, crisis or epidemic, or, and these are words that I'm using, of loneliness. Contrasting.
People are talking about epidemic. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just said a whole bunch of words. Take it from there. What do you think?
No, I think it's a really good point. And as you well know, you can be in a city of 7.5 million people and feel really lonely. I've been there. I've done that. And I remember that when I flew into Hong Kong, wow, this must have been like 30 or 40 years ago, like 1985, 86. I can remember being in the airport and just feeling really, these people are bumping into me. What's going on here? And I knew intellectually that there's a different sense of personal space, but it's something else to actually adjust to it. And so I still recall that. Yeah, no, I mean, and that's, again, it's like, when you're in different cultures in different places, you look around and you say, wow, yeah, that's a way of doing it I hadn't thought about, or, yeah, there's something going on here. And, you've seen that the data too, that happiness is not directly correlated to wealth,
Mm-hmm.
and what I've seen is, I think, up to a certain point, and then after that, it's not. And then there's other qualities, like the Bhutanese have their own happiness index, based not on money. I mean, yeah, you have to be above a certain level, Maslow's basic needs. But after that, you look at culture, you look at community, you look at your job satisfaction or work satisfaction. You look at issues that really are meaningful to who we are as people. And it seems to me that we've gotten away from that, and we're trying to replace it with stuff, and it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And the more stuff we compete for, the more we break into tribes so that we can get more stuff than the other tribe. And then, of course, that destroys that interconnectedness that we so desperately need. And I, personally, this little, I hate the word journey, it's overused, but this little journey is kind of about how I come to believe that the only real way out of all this is to create a new human tribe.
Okay.
Sort of a human a tribal identity that transcends. And I know this is going to be really difficult because it's pretty inbred in us to distrust the other. But boy, when you're with people like this and you see their kindness and you see their generosity, you say, wait a minute, these aren't the other, these are me, or just do things a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I guess that's kind of what I'm talking about and what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess this is a two-part question. One is your books are fiction, and your books, the one, like your most recent book in the series, I guess, of two books, does it tackle these themes? It seems to.
I think it does. It's like I'm basically kind of asking the question: are we so unevolved as a species that when we face difficult questions, like climate disaster, things like that, all we can do, the best we can do, is fall back on tribal identities and these sort of inbred distrusts of the other? I mean, have we not evolved any farther than that? And then I'm thinking, well, I think it's more than that. I mean, I think I don't mean this in a mystical sense, but there are forces at work that actually benefit from dividing and who profit from competition that even when it doesn't benefit people, much less humanity as a whole. And I think we need to look at that. And so in this particular case, yeah, it's a fantasy, but it's also an allegory. Who are we, and what do we draw on to fight this tendency toward division and divisiveness and hatred and racism? What do we do to fight that? So in these books, they I mean, it sounds dry, but it's actually pretty exciting because they take on this cabal of Nietzschean Ubermenches who are convinced that there's a group of people that are meant to rule, and they use every means at their control. And we're not just talking about these guys are like influencers with their gyms, right?
Yeah.
But they're using every other means at their control. You're talking about photography. Look at the things that we're bombarded with from media that reinforce all those differences rather than reinforcing what we have in common. And that is something I'm trying to get at with a book like this, because these guys come together around things like love. And I mean, that sounds corny, but they come together and loyalty and friendship. And that's what unites them in the face of a pretty formidable enemy.
Mm-hmm. Don Sawyer. Okay, look, I believe you have a website that's called donsawyer.org where people can find your books. Because part of my mission is to highlight the fact that one of the things that you do to make sense of your life, beyond going to these remote communities, arguably St. Catherine's is a remote community, but so how, I mean, being an academic, you had mentioned that you had started down the path of a PhD, is the kind of brain that says, I'm going to write a book. So why don't you give a quick... so when was the first time you wrote a book? Like, how old were you the first time you published a book?
Okay, so this is the first book. I know
Tomorrow is School.
And I'm sick to the heart thinking about it. Well, where did that come from? Our teaching experiences in Newfoundland. And when I had written letters to friends of mine, and one in particular who was a wonderful mentor and a writer himself, said, man, you got to write a book about this. I can't do that. But I also felt I owed it to the community and to the kids. This was a hell of an experience. And so unfortunately, my father was dying of cancer at the time, so we went back to be with him, but it gave me some time.
Yeah.
And I did write. And I was writing longhand in those days on yellow legal pads. And I did get it accepted, and it did get, to my amazement, published. And then to my amazement, it became a Canadian best-selling book. And then to my amazement, it started to be used in teacher training programs right across the country. So this was kind of a kickstart to my writing career. a friend of mine who actually went through a writing program and never could get anything written. And he said, "Wow," he said, "you're spoiled. You got published right off the bat." And it's kind of true. But also from there, it's like this same friend of mine. He says what he wants written on his tombstone is, well, at least he got a book out of it. And so, I mean, a lot of what I'm writing is coming out of these experiences that we're talking about. Like the other one, I did a young adult novel based on my experiences working in a Native high school where the rivers meet. So I wrote several kids books, and they're based on horrible experiences I had with a teacher when in grade 2. Boy, you can always get revenge with writing. And I told those stories to my daughters when they were young. So they gave me one Christmas. They gave me a really neat little notebook, and they said, "Okay, Dad, you got to write down all the Miss Flint stories and then get them." And that's what I did. So it's just been a parallel to my life. It hasn't, which is a really good thing, because if I tried to live on my writing, we would have been in dire straits.
Well, Dire Straits. Great musical reference. Don Sawyer, very musical name. And look, as I'm saying this, I'm looking at this photo in the Gambia of all these kids smiling and waving, looking warm, about to have their distribution of raw sugar. I mean, sugar. Listen, it's an important, especially when your caloric content is low. Having raw sugar is a huge boost. But let's move on to the next photo.
Okay.
So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.